has 29 schools in his ward. He won over 2-1 in the recent election. To introduce our speaker today, Great City Club member, Alderman Bob Fioretti. Bob?
Thank you, Jay. Have some fun? I don't know. Anyway, especially looking at this crowd. And I'm glad everybody's here to welcome our speaker. And good afternoon. And I am pleased and I am honored to introduce our speaker for this afternoon's luncheon. And since taking office 5 months ago, I've had the opportunity to work closely with our speaker, Arne Duncan, and the Chicago Public Schools on many of the initiatives that are very important to me, the constituents of my ward, and the city of Chicago. We are working on ways to find creative ways for funding in the second ward. And by working with Arne, we are looking for many partnerships with the developers and local businesses in our community to help fund the 29 schools that I have in our ward. Arne Duncan graduated magna cum laude from Harvard University in 1987, majoring in sociology. He was co-captain of Harvard's basketball team and was named the first team academic All-American. From 1987 to 1991, Arne returned to Chicago, and in 1992, he was appointed to direct the Ariel Education Initiative, which seeks to create outstanding educational opportunities for inner-city children on the city's south side. In 1998, he joined the Chicago Public School System, and in June of 2001, Mayor Richard M. Daley named Arne Chief Executive Officer of the Chicago Public Schools. He currently serves on many boards: Ariel Education Initiative, Chicago Cares, the Chicago Center, the Golden Apple Foundation, the Illinois Council Against Handgun Violence, Jobs for America's Graduates, Junior Achievement, the National Association of Basketball Coaches Foundation, Renaissance School Fund Scholarship, and the Southside YMCA. He also serves on the board and oversees for Harvard College and the visiting committee of Harvard University's Graduate School of Education and the University of Chicago's School of Social Service Administration. He was a fellow in the leadership of Greater Chicago Class of 1995 and a member of the Aspen Institute Henry Crown Fellowship Program Class of 2002. He has received honorary degrees from the Illinois Institute of Technology, almost in my ward, Lake Forest College, and the National Louis University. And I ask everybody here to please join me in welcoming our Chief Executive Officer of the Chicago Public School System, Arne Duncan.
Thank you, sir. You got it. All right, you got it.
Thank you so much, and thank you, Alderman, for that kind introduction. The Alderman and I have been having some battles about a fence in his ward, and I appreciate his courage, and we're doing the right thing by children, which is one of our many, many battles. 6 months ago, I planned my opening statement for today, and it went something like this. I am so deeply grateful that Illinois has finally reformed education funding, that we are taking steps to reduce the gross inequity amongst our school districts, that Chicago's catching up to other cities like New York and Boston in terms of per pupil funding, and that, at long last, our state will no longer trail the nation in terms of education funding. I would go on to praise the political courage of our legislative leaders and the governor, as well as all the members of the General Assembly, for putting our state's 2 million children ahead of politics. I would acknowledge that Democrats control both houses of the legislature and the governor's office, and they deserve much of the credit for bringing about this historic achievement. But I'd also salute Republicans for bipartisanship. I would urge taxpayer watchdog groups to direct the highest praise to our responsible and progressive leaders in Springfield. I would then go on to tell you all the wonderful things we're planning to do with the new state revenues to finally and fully give our children the education they desperately need and deserve including adding time to the school day, continuing to turn around our troubled schools, completely closing the achievement gap with the state, and getting even more of our students into college. Well, unfortunately, after the longest legislative session in Illinois history, one marked by juvenile levels of acrimony and dysfunction, I had to rewrite my opening and start from scratch. Instead, I will only tell you what we can afford to do, not what we need to do. I will tell you what we can't do and how much slower our progress will be as a result. But I won't make any excuses, and I will be blunt about the failures of Springfield to do right by our state's children. Before I do that, however, let me say that I'm deeply grateful that I have the absolute privilege of working for the Chicago public school system, fighting every day to help children learn. I want to thank my wife, Karen, for her extraordinary support in letting me do this work. I'm deeply grateful to be working for a mayor who never neglects the responsibility of children and who never allows politics to stand in the way of their education. I'm deeply grateful to be surrounded by such an extraordinary team of professionals led by Barbies and Watkins. Could I ask all of our Chicago Public School management team to please stand and please give them a huge round of applause. With Barbara's leadership and Hill Hammock, who just recently joined us from LaSalle Bank, I'm absolutely convinced we have the best management team of any public school system in the country, and they make huge personal sacrifices. I'm very, very grateful to all of them. I'm thankful to have a dedicated and determined partners on the Board of Education under the leadership of President Rufus Williams and Vice President Claire Mugnana. And I want to salute all 625 local school councils, principals, as well as assistant principals, clerks, and other school personnel who spent the last month preparing to open schools this Tuesday, September 4th. We are ready, willing, and absolutely eager to go, and we're looking forward to the best start to the school year ever. Finally, I want to pay a special tribute to our 27,000 teachers who do the hard and demanding work every single day of connecting with children and imparting their knowledge. Anyone who's ever spent an hour in a classroom knows how challenging teaching can be, and they, more than anyone else in the system, deserve credit for our success. We've worked extraordinarily hard to build respect and trust for the Chicago Teachers Union, and we've had 20 years of labor peace. I'd like to ask Jim Francis to stand and just share with the audience a little good news we have today.
We have a bit of announcement today. Late last night, we settled a collective bargaining agreement between the Chicago Public Schools taken to the House of Delegates of the Union on Friday afternoon at the request of Marilyn Stewart. We're not going to discuss any details with you about this, but let me just give you a little preview. We think this is going to be, as Arne says, a very fiscally responsible agreement that we have fair to the members of the Chicago Community. It will continue the stability that we've had for the last 20 years. Marilyn Stewart deserves all of your commendation for the hard work and the leadership that she has done during this agreement. To say it's easy from her point of view would be the world's understatement. It's enormously difficult. We brought this agreement together because of the excellent team that Arne Duncan has assembled over at the Chicago Public Schools, and they deserve your gratitude. Finally and lastly, these things don't happen but for the leadership of Mayor Daley and for the leadership of Arne Duncan. And he deserves, again, your applause and recognition.
This is a big, big deal. And I just want to take a minute, thank Jim for his extraordinary leadership. Charlie Rose, Charlie, please stand. As part of Jim's team, does a great, great job. Our internal team has worked extraordinarily hard, and it's not just, again, the hours they've put in, it's the level of their integrity and the trust they've built with Chicago Teachers Union. Ascension Juarez, who's not here, I don't think, but Rachel Resnick, Joe Moriarty. Ascension's here? Oh, great. Ascension, Rachel Resnick, Joe Moriarty, Cheryl Colston, please stand. Let's give them a round of applause for all the hard work. And I just want to echo Jim's comments. Marilyn Stewart has done a great, great job as a leader. I think in our leadership positions, we're always trying to grow and we're always trying to get better. And I can tell you, in all honesty, I've seen her grow tremendously in the past month or two. And she's done a great, great job. The two members of her team here, Sandra Schultz and Molly Carroll, please stand and let's give them a round of applause as well. It's not just about getting a deal done, and we do have some more steps to go. It's how you do it. And the previous deal we did 4 years ago, which was my first one, and I had a huge learning curve. We went into December. I think we got it done about 4:30 or 5 one morning. I remember I went home and slept for about an hour, went back to work. This time we got it done before school starts. We got it done at a very, very reasonable early hour last night. And just both teams, I want to compliment both the CTU and our labor team for working so hard together, not just in getting the right thing done by children, but the way you did it was just very, very professional. So thank you so much. Let me just take a minute to talk about where we are as a system, and thanks to the hard work of all those partners, the union, the teachers, the principals, the LSC members, the management team, the business community helping out, there's a lot to be proud of. We've seen state test scores rise at the elementary level for 7 years in a row. We've doubled the rate of gain of the rest of the state. Let me say it again, doubled the rate of gain as the rest of the state. The dropout rate is going down every single year. We've doubled in the past 5 years the number of students not just taking AP classes, but passing AP classes at the high school level. And on the ACT scores, we're also doubling the rate of gain over the past 5 years of both the state and the country. So there's a lot to be proud of. Today, and this would have been unimaginable 10 years ago before the mayor took over, the top 3 high schools, the top 3 public high schools in this state are Chicago public schools. And Newsweek magazine recently listed Lincoln Park High School as among one of the best neighborhood high schools in the country. We have middle-class families for the first time ever paying thousands of dollars in tuition to go to our tuition-based pre-K programs. We have dozens of neighborhood, not just magnet schools, but neighborhood elementary schools becoming schools of choice. And as you guys know, the competition to get into our best high schools gets steeper and steeper every single year. We have 48 elementary schools that are up 6 years in a row, and Barbara Easton Walks and her team have done an extraordinary job of pushing that progress. We have thousands of students today taking languages like Chinese and Arabic and Russian. I keep looking for them to tutor me. That was never one of my strengths, and they just have these huge opportunities. We have many, many students from the Hispanic community who are growing up now. They're going to be trilingual, learning English, they know Spanish, and now they're learning Chinese. And think about their job opportunities down the road. So we're very, very proud of progress. There's a lot to celebrate, but everyone in this room knows that we have a long, long way to go. And we're nowhere near yet where I think we can be and should be and will be as a school system. And our ultimate goal is really to make sure that every child during every stage of their academic career is prepared both to graduate and to be successful in the world of college and in the world of work. And what does it take to get there? There's so many ways to measure the achievement gap and what's improving. There was a recent consortium study from the University of Chicago that on one hand was very good news. It talked about our Black and Latino students that start out behind the rest of the state when they come to us in 3rd grade. But by the time they're in 8th grade, they're equal to, if not surpassing, their counterparts from around the state. So it's one way to look at the achievement gap. You can look at racial gaps. My issue with that is, quite frankly, if our students end up doing a little bit better than the students in Robbins or in Aurora, that's not good enough. They have to do much, much better than that. And that bar is actually too low. And so as we've talked as a district, we really set the goal that we want every single child not just to graduate from high school, but to be able to get a 20 on the ACT. And that's a number that by every national standard, if students have a 20, they can go to a good school, they have a good chance of graduating. So and I also like it's an absolute bar. It's not a bar that's going to change every year. And we can measure ourselves year over year of are we getting better, are we getting closer to achieving that. And if that's our real goal, quite frankly, we have a long way to go. Only about half our students graduate from high school. Only about a quarter of those that graduate score 20. And so we're nowhere near yet we can say we've made it. We have to continue to push very, very hard. And let me be clear, that goal of an ACT score of 20, that's not a high school issue. That's an elementary school issue. It's a preschool issue. We have to dramatically raise the bar. Not starting junior year, it's too late. But what are we doing with our 3-year-olds and our 4-year-olds and 5-year-olds and every step along that path so that when they're juniors, they're going to be comfortable and confident and can demonstrate that knowledge. And there's some hurdles, some barriers that we have to overcome. One of them, I think, quite frankly, is the No Child Left Behind law. And let me tell you why. No Child Left Behind law talks about the number of students who are meeting state standards. And we're thrilled that number has gone up dramatically. But we think if students are meeting state standards but not exceeding state standards, that's not good enough. And they're still not prepared to be successful in college and in the world of work. And so if 100% of our students are meeting state standards, we'd be heroes in the press, would be heroes nationally. But if none of them are exceeding state standards, we haven't changed their lives. And so we really have come to see the No Child Left Behind law as something that perpetuates mediocrity, perpetuates the status quo. And we have to set the bar here in Chicago much, much higher for ourselves. And we have to push very, very hard to get more exposure earlier. Our 8th graders have to be taking algebra. We have to have more students learning languages earlier. We can't afford to wait. We also have to focus, and we're pushing very hard this summer, to focus on the transition from 8th grade to 9th grade. And the numbers are pretty scary. As our students matriculate from 8th grade to 9th grade, we see attendance rates drop dramatically. We have great data from the consortium that says if students in their freshman year miss 10 days, they have less than a 40% chance of ever graduating from high school. And that's just not a hypothetical hypothesis. That's facts looking at data from 5 years ago. And so we have to have a laser-like focus on having our students in school, on time, every single day. Historically, we looked at attendance 5 weeks into the school year. That's too late. They've missed 2 weeks. They are in grave, grave jeopardy of ever graduating. And so we're pushing our teachers and principals and counselors to start much earlier and every single day work with those freshmen to make sure that they're comfortable and confident. We want every freshman this year to have a mentor, an adult in their life, in their school that they trust. It's fascinating. We did some qualitative data asking freshmen what works for them, what doesn't. We found that freshmen, same neighborhood, same socioeconomic challenges, issues, whatever it might be, freshmen who said they had an adult at school who cared about them went to school a week more. So if we want to drive attendance, that's a very simple thing we can do, is make sure every child has that mentor in their lives from day one. And we want to see 100% of freshmen involved in some kind of extracurricular activity, sports or drama or art or music or chess, debate team, whatever it might be, to give them a reason to come to school every day. And we think if we can do those things much, much better this year, starting literally next Tuesday on the 4th, we can dramatically improve not just our graduation rates, but our students' life chances over the long haul. As a district, as we strive to become the best big city school system in America, we have to continue to have a laser-like focus on the 3 core strategies that I talk about every single year that I'm here. First and foremost, instructional excellence. Secondly, talent development. And third, creating more learning opportunities for our children. I want to quickly walk you through those 3. On the instructional excellence side, Barbara on the elementary side has done a great, great job of streamlining the curriculum and trying to get core materials in reading and math into every single elementary school. We're phasing that in a much more rapid pace with some new investments. On the high school side, and I'll talk a little bit more about this later, we're pushing very, very hard on our high school transformation initiative, which will have 25 of our high schools starting this fall. Next year we hope to add another 20, the following year another 20, 25. So literally over the next 3 years, pretty quickly, we'll have 65 schools involved in the high school transformation effort. On the talent development side, we're in the people business, and there's simply nothing more important we can do than attract and then retain the best and brightest at every level of the organization. Our HR team under Ascension's leadership has just done a phenomenal job. And over the past 4 or 5 years, we've gone from 9,000 applicants coming to teach in Chicago Public Schools wanting to teach to 20,000 applicants. We've doubled the applicant pool in a very short amount of time. Not only is we have 10 applicants for every position, 38% of those we hired last year had master's degrees. So it's not just our biggest pool of talent, it's our best. We've pushed very, very hard to do alternative certification. We hired over 400 people last year. Accountants, lawyers, journalists, people coming out of industry, often taking 60, 70, 80% pay cuts, but they have a passion for children and want to make a difference. They're coming in to teach of us, and we want to continue to encourage that. We're doing something very, very innovative this year, first time ever in partnership with the Teachers Union, where for the first time ever, we're going to be compensating teachers in a set of 10 schools this year, going to 20 next year, differentially based upon how students perform. We've never before had financial incentives to reward excellence. And so what we're doing is trying to recruit and attract the top talent to go to some of our toughest schools and give them a reward for doing that. And then based upon student achievement, teachers can make an additional $5,000 to $8,000. So there's no downside, there's a very significant upside. And we've structured this program as the largest federal grant we've ever received, over $30 million. We've had several local foundations step up, so that's now over to $40 million, so that not just the teachers, but every adult in the building will benefit if the students do well. And we see in those 48 schools where they've had 6 years of progress in a row, it's not just the teachers, it's the custodians, it's the security guards, it's the lunchroom attendants, it's every adult in there building a culture of excellence and high expectations. So it's a program, we're very, very excited about it. We're going to start small this year, 10 schools, figure out what works, what doesn't. But going forward, it's an area we think we can get dramatically better at. Finally, it's a fascinating time in the evolution of our system. We have a baby booming generation moving towards retirement. We have just over 600 schools. We have 150 new principals coming in this year. It's a quarter of our principals. It's both a huge challenge and a huge opportunity. And our principals are CEOs. They have to be instructional leaders. They have to manage multi-million-dollar budgets. They have to be great with people. They have to work with the community. There's so much we're asking of them. And so we're putting a huge amount of time and energy. Gail Ward is here and is working very, very hard to provide great mentoring and induction to these young principals. And our success or failure for the next 15, 20 years, I think, is going to be determined by our ability to provide great support and their ability to be successful. If they do well, they're going to take our system to another level. If they struggle and if we don't support them, we're going to take a step backwards. So it's both a time of huge challenge and huge opportunity, and we want to work very, very hard. We've had a series of principals retire, some of whom are absolute superstars. We're bringing them back to mentor and coach and work with this next generation of talent, and we think if we can do that well, we have a chance to do something pretty special. And then finally, we're working really, really hard to build a culture of trust and respect. And we think those intangibles are so critically important. And we realize just how unbelievably intertwined all of our fates are. There are no good teachers who will stay at a school if they don't have a good principal. If we in central office aren't supporting the schools, we're going to burn them out and we're going to lose them. And so how at every level of the organization are we finding ways to support one another, to respect one another, sort of break down historic barriers of teachers versus principals, or principals versus central office. None of that is productive. None of that helps students learn. I think more and more we're coming to understand how much we need each other, how much we need to listen to each other. And if we do that well, we think we can take student achievement to the next level. And then finally, a third core strategy is what we talk about in terms of more learning opportunities. And it's a simple recognition that teaching students 6 hours a day, 5 days a week, 9 months out of the year isn't anywhere near good enough, that our students need so much more than that. So we're trying to dramatically expand pre-kindergarten options. We'll have about 1,000 more students going to pre-K with us this year. We're trying to do more full-day kindergarten. We're trying to dramatically expand the number of schools that are open on Saturdays. And you'd be amazed how many students desperately want to come to school on Saturdays. We're pushing very hard to do that. More and more after-school programs, trying to push sports at the elementary level, intramural sports. We're trying to get more and more of our high school students on college campuses. We call it our Summer Quest program. We have sophomores and juniors going to colleges around the country, and so many of our students are first generation going to college. And having the chance to become comfortable and confident and feel they can belong on a college campus is critically important. We want to do more of that. And then we're opening 17 new schools this year as part of the Renaissance 2010 initiative. Josh Edelman, we brought in recently, recruited him from Washington to lead that effort. And we're going to continue to create great new schools in neighborhoods that have been historically underserved. That effort, we're starting to get to critical mass. Places like Englewood, where I would argue for decades we haven't done enough for those children. Last year we opened 4 new schools. This fall we're coming back with a 5th. And as we start to get to critical mass, we can really change the lives, not just of individual children or a couple hundred, but of a whole community. To support those 3 core strategies, particularly given such scarce resources, we also have to be great managers. And Hill Hammock's come aboard, who's worked with Dave in the past. We have Pedro Martinez here as our Chief Financial Officer, and they're doing a great job of trying to drive every scarce dollar into the classroom. We have administrative costs down to 4.1% of the overall budget. We're trying to bring in new information systems, both for our student data, student information, as well as for all of our employees, so that will be much more accurate, much more timely, and we can be much more responsive. We're trying to be very, very transparent with our data. Every school has a school scorecard. We publish this every single year, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And the more people know the truth about what's working and what's not, the more I think we're going to continue to improve. We're setting clear goals for every single school and managing against that. And then we've created a district dashboard so that on a weekly and a monthly basis we can evaluate a series of key metrics that we think help determine our success and figure out, are we making progress, or are we taking a step backwards, and if so, what do we do to change that? And then finally, we can't neglect our buildings. And unfortunately, we have about $5 billion in unmet capital needs. And unfortunately, we haven't had any money from the state for the past 4 years. But thanks to the mayor's leadership, thanks to the aldermen, thanks to some money from the Chicago Public Schools, we're embarking on an unprecedented effort, the Modern Schools Across Chicago program, to build about 27 new schools. It's very expensive. It's going to cost between $1 billion and $1.5 billion to get this done. We have neighborhoods, particularly the southwest side and northwest side of the city, that are desperately overcrowded. If we want to really have our students be successful academically, we can't have 35, 40 students in a classroom. And so we're not waiting for the state. We just have to move ahead. And I want to thank the mayor. I want to thank the aldermen. And I want to thank thank our team for working so hard to make that happen. As we prepare to start the school year in about 6 days, there are 3 major challenges that I think lie before us. And I want to walk through those 3 with you for a moment. The first one is the need for dramatic improvement at the high school level. And we've talked a lot about the success at the elementary level and we've seen dramatic improvement there. High schools have been much more incremental, much more marginal. In fact, our Prairie State scores took a dip this past year. And as we talk to our students, it's fascinating what they tell us. We try and spend lots of time talking individually. We do surveys of our high school students, and they tell us a couple things. They tell us our expectations aren't high enough for them. They tell us that too often they don't feel safe in their buildings. And they say too often they don't have an adult in their lives who really cares about them. And so while it's great to celebrate the elementary success, we have to continue to push for dramatic improvements at the high school level. And for me, that's really the battle. That's the core of our work over the next 4 to 5 years. Big picture, I think there are a couple things that we can do. First of all, we have a set of extraordinarily high-performing high schools. We have a set of new schools like the Noble Street Group, Urban Prep, our first all-boys school we opened this fall, that's doing very, very well. Perspectives Charter School, North Lawndale College Prep. They're doing a great, great job in some of our toughest communities. And we want to see those schools replicate and do more and serve more children, learn from their lessons. We also have a series, as you know, of extraordinarily high-performing schools. Walter Payton, Whitney Young, Northside College Prep, Jones is emerging. And what we want to do going forward, we have a bit of an opportunity we haven't had before with the modern schools across Chicago. We're building new high schools, which we haven't been able to do much of historically. We should try and replicate and franchise some of those schools. Should we think about a Whitney Young campus downtown and maybe a Whitney Young campus on the west side and the south side? And just as other companies, McDonald's and Starbucks, have franchised great ideas, we think we have a great, great resource that we haven't done enough with. So there's a chance to replicate at the top what's going well, both with the new schools and with schools with a long track record of success. Secondly, we talked about the high school transformation effort. And we have now 25 schools starting this fall. We're trying to dramatically improve the rigor of what we're teaching students, starting the core content areas, English, math, science, just with freshmen, growing a grade each year, again, trying to learn what works, what doesn't, and how do we continue to dramatically improve there. We're going to move very aggressively for what I see is about 65 schools in the middle. 25 this year, another 20 next year, another 20, 25 the following year. If we can get dramatically better there over time, a set of schools that are decent options today, but honestly not great options, could get dramatically better. We want to work on personalization. We want to make sure we're reaching students. We want to make sure they have high aspirations and we're driving them and having them visit schools and doing things like that. We want to work very, very hard to strengthen the curriculum in a whole set of schools in the middle. And then schools that at the bottom, that if they are resistant to change, if year after year we're not seeing improvement, I think we need to move aggressively to turn them around. We started something very, very interesting this past year at the elementary level, Sherman Elementary School, where we kept school that had chronically failed, students were fleeing the school, where we brought in a team of absolute pros, a whole new team of teachers, a great principal, the students stayed in the building, and that school in 1 year has made dramatic progress. It's a fascinating model. We're doing that a second time this upcoming year of Harvard Elementary, and it's something I think we have to look at the high school level. And so if we can replicate at the top, dramatically improve rigor for those schools in the middle, and at the bottom if things just simply aren't working, do a turnaround, do a conversion, bring in a great, great team of leaders. Hopefully not in the 10 years from now, but the next 3, 4, 5 years, we can have a great, great set of high school options in every neighborhood of the city. The second huge challenge we face is the violence in our community. And there's so much to celebrate from this past school year, but in other ways it was just an unbelievably tough year. For those of you that don't know, we had 24 students shot dead in a 40-week school year. That's more than one child killed every 2 weeks. It's a staggering rate of death. And it's sort of ironic that at the same time that's happening, our schools have never been safer. We've seen a double-digit decline in the number of students, number of violent incidents in our schools. Things are going better there. But somehow, collectively, we as a city have to find a way to make our streets safer and to make sure students can get to and from school safely. Just this past week, we had another young girl, an honor roll student at Fenger High School, Patrice Brown, shot dead, innocent victim of just a random shooting. Our schools have never been safer, but it's been at a big cost. We spend $56 million a year on school security. In a different world where guns weren't so readily available and where killing was not so readily accepted, that's all money that could be spent for reducing class size, more after-school programs, more summer school, all the things that we know make a difference in students' lives. And there's one death that sort of I think hit everybody particularly hard was a young man named Blair Holt, who was an honor roll student at Julian High School. was on the bus going home after school. Someone came in, just started firing across the bus. He actually jumped in front of the shooter, so some of the other kids didn't get killed. We had 4 of the kids also shot. It's a miracle they weren't killed. But that hit particularly hard, and for a couple reasons. First of all, that was the week my dad died. And I went to Blair Holt's funeral 2 days after my dad passed. And while losing my dad was it was a loss, it wasn't a tragedy. And going to Blair Holt's funeral, it really hit home that it's tough, it's a loss, it's a natural thing for children to bury their parents. It's not a natural thing for parents to bury their children. And somehow that's becoming the norm here. Somehow we have to fight that and say that that is absolutely unacceptable. And as a society, I just think our values are crazy. I think we value our right to bear arms more than we value our children. I think this is a tough, tough issue. You can't talk about it without talking about race. I've said repeatedly, if you had 24 kids, and God forbid this ever happened, but if you had 24 students killed in the Barrington School District or the Winnetka School District or the Hinsdale School District, I think all hell would break loose. I think laws would change. Somehow, when it's black and Latino kids predominantly being killed, somehow that's an acceptable rate of loss. And I think we have to challenge that. I think we have to talk openly about race. I think we also have to talk about class and raise some tough issues and have some courageous conversations. So many of these killings is black on black crime. And I think we have to really challenge the black middle class. Are they reaching back and helping mentor and help support those students who are struggling, don't have a dad at home and don't have a role model? Or are they shying away and keeping their distance? And so I think we have to really challenge ourselves to address this stuff. I think these are tough questions, and they require tough conversations, and they ultimately require real action, because the violence absolutely has to stop. And what I worry most about is the impact it has on the children who survive. And we're doing everything we can to get our students to think long term and to defer gratification and think about going to college and think about what they want to do with their lives. And it's so hard for our students to do that if they can't make it day to day, if they're worrying about just making it to and from school. I talked to someone after Blair Holt's death who came to me and said, Arne, I'm so sorry about that. He was so bad, so sorry that he was in the wrong place in the wrong time. I said, you're crazy. He was in the right place at the right time. It was 3 o'clock in the afternoon on the bus going home from school. Where do you want him to be? So somehow there's just been this acceptance that we absolutely have to challenge, and we have to create an environment where all of our students can just think about college, can think about going to the great school, can think about taking AP classes, and not kind of make it safely day to day. I want to thank the mayor, who's been a passionate advocate for gun control laws that make sense for years. I want to thank Father Flager and Reverend Jackson for stepping up and really taking this issue on. And I think collectively we have to join them, because we just cannot go through another year like we went through this past year. And then finally, the third challenge, the last one I'll talk about, I'll go back to where I started, is Springfield. And what we saw this year, quite frankly, was a devastating lesson in how not to lead. And I talked to you earlier about what we're trying to do to build a culture of respect and trust, and how critically important we think that culture is. Beyond the data, beyond all the academic strategies, we don't think we can be successful until we really learn to trust and respect one another. And what you saw this year in Springfield was the exact opposite. And the company results you saw was a paralyzed system, a dysfunctional system. And what we used to do, it's interesting, we used to send our students, our 8th grade students, down to Springfield for a civics lesson every year, and many of our students would go down. And I think what we decided, we're going to boycott this year. Well, we're going to stop that. We're going to ask our 8th grade, our principals, elementary principals, maybe we'll go to Iowa or Michigan or Wisconsin. We'll go visit some other state capitals and see what we can learn from those states about how to lead. We are going to receive some new money from Springfield. We're grateful for every penny we can get. I'm very, very thankful for that. But a couple of things didn't happen. There's no long-term stability and predictability, no ongoing revenue source. So every year we have to go down to Springfield hat in hand, beg for more resources. It makes it extraordinarily difficult to plan, makes it very difficult from the central office, makes it very tough for our principals never knowing year to year what resources they have. As I said earlier, there's no capital money for the 4th year in a row, 0 investment in our schools' buildings around the system, and there's no fundamental structural reform. And as you guys know here, there's a funding system that I'm convinced is just absolutely morally bankrupt. You have school districts that over the course of a child's life, if we're receiving $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 per child, wealthy school districts that are up closer to $20,000 per child. Over the course of a child's 12-year academic career, some students here in Illinois have $125,000 to $150,000 more dollars spent on them than other children. And guess who gets shortchanged? It's children of color. No surprise. If you look at the 10 wealthiest school districts in the state, look at the 10 poor school districts in the state, look at the disparities, breaks down very, very cleanly along racial lines. And so you can't talk about these state inequities without talking about race. And the children of the rich, because we have a property tax-based system, get dramatically more spent on them than the children of the poor. And ultimately, we have to decide, are we comfortable with that? Is that what we want to stand for? Is that good enough for us as a state? And I sort of question, do we really value our children if only 150 of our schools are open 12 hours a day, but 450 schools that need to be are not? Only half our students who want to go to after-school programs can. And only a small percent of our students, 3- and 4-year-olds in the city who need pre-K programs, have access to them. It's also staggering if you look not just in the inequities within the state, but across the country. The children in New York every single year have $4,000 more dollars spent on them than a child in Chicago. You multiply $4,000 times over 400,000 students, that's $1.6 billion the New York school system has on top of what we have. If you look at Boston, it's $2,000 per child. You do the math, that's $800 million more the Boston school system has compared to us in Chicago. Think what we could do for all of our core strategies that make a difference in students' lives if we just had a small percent of that. So what I think we're going to try and do this year is to try and take 100,000 people down to Springfield this spring and to see and create a rally and create a massive demonstration the likes of which Springfield has never seen. And it's a bit of a radical move. We took down about 2,000 students this year. Went fairly well, but obviously it really didn't have any impact. And so we're trying to up the ante dramatically and really, parents, teachers, principals, community leaders, business leaders, religious leaders, really go down there and try and once and for all get Springfield to fundamentally change how they fund public education. These are all tough challenges, so we got our work cut out for us. Dramatically raising the bar at the high school level, trying to end violence in the community, and fundamentally changing Springfield's priorities at its core. And raising these issues, I think, by definition, will make us uncomfortable, will require some courageous conversations, and more importantly, will require courageous action. But I think we have to challenge the status quo, both because it is so fundamentally broken and because the work is so important. And I want to close by just giving you a little bit of sense for our work and how tough it is. We serve 80 million meals each year to our children. We serve tens of thousands of children 3 meals a day. We have a set of schools, almost 30 schools, 3,200 students. We send bags of food home to the children on the weekends, Friday afternoons, so those children don't go hungry over the weekend. We give tens of thousands of our students eyeglasses because they can't see. 85% of our students live below the poverty line. And what I tell our staff every day is that that's no badge of honor. Our children, 85% of whom are poor, why are they poor? Because their families are poor. Why are their families poor? Because they've received inadequate educations. Public education has failed them. And so we have a real battle here. If a generation from now, 85% of our students are still poor, I think all of us as leaders would have failed. We wouldn't have given our students the tools they need to be successful. However, if we succeed, we have a chance not just to change the lives of our children, but the lives of their children and children for generations to come. So this is a battle that's much bigger than us. It's much bigger than education. To me, it's really a battle about trying to end poverty. And if we can create great opportunities for our students, if they can enter the mainstream society, if they can become productive citizens, if they can become productive leaders, they have a chance to do whatever they want to do. And we have many members of our staff who did not come from wealthy backgrounds, who came from very humble beginnings, but because they got good educations, they're now helping to lead the third largest school system in America. So this is a battle that I think is, again, bigger than us, bigger than education. It's about trying to end poverty. It's about trying to create leaders. It's really a battle about social justice. So we're going to continue to push. We're going to continue to work very, very hard, and I hope you'll join us in that fight. Thank you so much.
We have time for a couple of questions. Kathy Posner, of course, is at the microphone as always. First and foremost, line up behind. Make the questions short.
Oh, this will be very short. You talked about how students tell you how they don't have an adult in their life who cares about them, about the importance of adult mentors at school, how you're pushing teachers, counselors, and principals, but you never once spoke about the parental responsibility. Why is it everyone else's job to help? I think what needs to be done, and do you agree, that makes it a question, that you need parenting classes. I do volunteer work at a school, Doolittle, on South Side, and I brought my principal today, Lori Lennox. It's a pre-K through 8th, and they do have parenting classes. How come parenting classes aren't required at every school so parents take responsibility, not the people who are paid, the people who actually have the children?
Yeah, it's a great question, and we do have to absolutely challenge parents to do more. And what I always try and do before you blame others is really look in the mirror. Let me tell you, historically, Chicago Public Schools didn't welcome parents into the schools. Parents are supposed to drop their children off, come back and get them. And we're trying to dramatically change that culture. I talked about the schools as community schools and really opening the schools. What I didn't go into, I should have maybe had some more detail, we have a whole series of schools now where you have 100 to 125 parents coming to school every day, not for their children's education, but for their own, GED classes, ESL classes, family counseling, family literacy nights. So we absolutely have to continue to challenge parents. We need to create avenues for them and opportunities for them. But at the end of the day, we need to do everything we can to change these students' lives. And I've seen too many children growing up working on our Mother's Program on the South Side of children who didn't happen to have two-parent families, didn't happen to have the most functional families, but went on to do extraordinarily well because they had people in their lives who cared about them. And so before I condemn parents, yes, we need to challenge them, yes, we need to welcome them in, we still have to do a lot more to make sure children that come from very humble beginnings have an opportunity to be successful.
Thank you.
State your name. We all know Kathy, but state your name.
Absolutely. Hi, Amy Sue Mertens, proud graduate of Chicago Public Schools and City Club member. First of all, I want to say thank you so much. I work for University of Illinois Extension out of Cook County, and you welcomed us into your schools. We do parenting classes, by the way, within the Chicago Public School system, and we're very happy to do that. I'm also on a local school council, and I do your Principal for a Day program every year. You have a room full of people here who have a lot of influence. Tell us what you want us to do.
That's a good question. I go back, again, I see these three, for the next 5 years, these three huge challenges. One is how do we really make every single high school in Chicago viable? How do we work on that? Secondly, how do we ensure that our students are safe? And third, how do we get not incremental change, but dramatic and fundamental change in Springfield? And there's a lot of political types here, there's a lot of business leader types here. We really need your voice in Springfield to say, again, it's not a Republican issue, it's not a Democrat issue, it's not city versus suburbs, all those are false issues. It's right now, as a state, we don't value our children, and that fundamentally has to change.
Then I want to challenge everyone here to be a mentor, to attend the Principal for a Day program, and to look into becoming members of your local school council. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks for your involvement, too.
Hi, my name is Judith Turk, and I'm with Identity Theft Restoration. And incidentally, I have my whole table joining you in the spring to go down to Springfield.
Right, thank you.
But I think before we go there, I would like to see us all go to the airport when our governor takes off to fly back and forth, and I'm tired of us having to pay for that. That should be going to our schools. The other thing I want to ask you, I have been in some of the high schools in the past several years doing a mentor program. And one of the things I noticed is the dress of the teachers. It may be a small part, but I think if the teachers don't dress like the students, that there might be a little more respect given to the teachers. What do you feel about that?
Yeah, well, I think that may be a piece of the issue. I think the bottom line is we have to raise expectations dramatically. We have to challenge principals to do more. We have to challenge ourselves to do more. We have to challenge teachers to do more. We have to challenge students to do more, and parents. And we all have a piece in this. And so to me, again, it's not about casting blame or saying one person or another. The bottom line is that we have to get dramatically better at the high school level. We all have to challenge the status quo. We all have to improve. A dress might be a piece of it, but honestly, it goes a lot deeper than that.
Absolutely.
The rigor of the curriculum has to go up. Again, more extracurricular. So it's not one, I wish it was an easy answer. I'll also say that there isn't a school system in the country that has a system of great high schools. Everyone's the same ballpark that we are. Some great schools, a lot in the middle, and some at the very bottom. And so our goal is really to become the first big city school system in America that has a system, not 10 great high schools, 100 great high schools. So it's an ambitious goal. It's not easy, but that's what we have to do.
Good afternoon, Arne.
Good to see you.
I'm Morgan Carter from Omnibus Television. I wanted to talk just a bit about the first question that was asked. I had 12 interns from Inglewood, 8 girls and 4 boys. Not every household even has parents. Some of my children were in group homes. Some of my children had 2 adults that were either incarcerated or on drugs. One of my girls was 4 months pregnant. Another one had just been pregnant. 3 of my boys couldn't read well. One of them was on probation. So the assumption that parent training means that there are parents, and that's not necessarily true. Many of them live with grandparents and great-grandparents, neighbors, relatives. Some of them are homeless. One of the children on our last day of having these interns, someone came to do retribution against another member of the family, and our girl almost got shot. The bullet passed her by 4 inches. So I think really we need, as Reverend Jackson would say, a contextual reality. The backgrounds that the children come from, and I don't care whether it's Southwest Side or Northwest Side, whether it's entirely black or white or Hispanic, these children, it's amazing they get to school. Yeah. Some of them stay from school because of fear of violence, and others in some areas, according to one study, if they find out they're HIV positive, I had 2 of them, they don't come back to school. So these are things that we need to do. We need to also be at school the first day. You spoke about that on Monday. Maybe you could add to that challenge for the parents and men in particular to come to school on Monday.
Yeah, first and
on Tuesday.
Yeah, Monday's fine too. We'll take them on Monday. They can stay. Morgan, I just want to thank you for your tremendous commitment to the community and what you've done. And I think he is speaking the truth about what so many of our students are dealing with. One thing I didn't talk about, I think the vast majority of children have parents we can work with and do a good job with. We have about 9,000 homeless children. We have a set of children, unfortunately, a small percent. I think homes are so dysfunctional that whatever we do during the school day isn't enough. So one of the things we're looking at through the Renaissance 2010 initiative is, can we start a series of public boarding schools? And I think there's certain students that we should have 24/7 and really figure out how to dramatically change the culture and the outcome. And so we want to push very hard to think about that. We've never done that. There's one great school like that in Washington that Josh Edelman worked at. We're trying to learn from that model and figure out how we do that. The last part of Morgan, your question, obviously we want to have ideally 100% perfect attendance next Tuesday, September 4th. We want to encourage people to come out to the schools, welcome children back. We'd love to see, ministers, men, business leaders, whoever it is, shaking hands, at the school entrance, letting students know how much you care about them and how much you value them. And again, I think it's at the start of the school year so critically important. If we can have a great first day, if we can have a great first week, we can ride that momentum throughout the school year. If we start slow, it's hard to recover from that. So a huge push. And again, if people want to come out to schools and just be part of that celebration, we'd absolutely welcome that and appreciate that.
Gabriella, I'm with Project Exploration. We try to create science opportunities for kids that maybe aren't involved in other programs. Arne and CPS, thank you so much for the hard work, especially with the financial challenges. Most of the people in this room maybe aren't already at schools. Could you talk a little bit about the out-of-school time, what your goals might be for some of those experiences, and maybe give some of us some direction about what's the best way to partner with CPS?
Sure, and I think that's so critically important. And people talk about, two ways to think about it. People talk about a longer school day. The other thing is just more time with children. And so we want our schools open 12, 13, 14 hours a day. We want them open 6 days a week. We want them open 11, 12 months out of the year. And there are many ways to do that. We want a whole host of very high-quality after-school programming, academic enrichment being the heart. But again, drama and art and sports and debate and yearbook and chess and all the science stuff you and your husband are are doing just extraordinary set of opportunities that you're providing for students. What we want to do is give children a reason to be excited about coming to school every day. And it may not always be that they love trigonometry or they love biology, but they may love debate or the chess club or drama, and that's their reason to go to school. And so we absolutely welcome volunteers to come and coach or to start a club or to help tutor or help mentor. We have people working very, very hard, and the overwhelming majority of our schools now are open these longer hours. Students desperately want these opportunities. We're trying to go from 100 schools open on Saturdays to 200 because children want to go to school on Saturdays. Again, it might be a little counterintuitive. There's a huge demand. There's a huge interest there. So there are so many ways to help out. Cynthia Greenleaf is in the back. Cynthia, if you can wave. Cynthia works on a lot of our partnership programs and leads the Pencil for a Day program. So essentially, that's our point of contact. But again, I just encourage people to talk to the individual principals. And the vast majority of our principals want more involvement, want people stepping up, and there are lots of opportunities to be creative. And students will pick up on your passion. You don't have to create one. If you love something, students will build upon your enthusiasm.
We have a principal here who would like to have that program, the Community and Schools program, Doolittle. And since she came here today, how do we find out how Doolittle can get that program of being open till 7 at night and on Saturdays?
Kathy, you have something to say?
It was ending and I had to grab it before.
I'll talk to you as soon as we're done.
Okay, thanks.
Last question to close, Alderman Gutierrez.
You've done a wonderful thing here today, and I'll tell you what it is. In your presentation, you mentioned people in the audience or various people who are doing things in a positive manner, and I think they're going to walk out the door and try harder. You've done a wonderful thing by mentioning their name.
There you go. Okay. Thank you so much. We got good. Not expensive good. Three quick things before we give one more round of applause for our speaker. First, we have to mention Mr. Education, Art Berman, former state senator, spent a lot of years fighting the battle. Number two, and this is a very austere group. How many are public school graduates? Raise your hand. Look at that. There you go. And number three, personal privilege. Some of you may have heard and watched me talk about defending public employees and people who work damn hard, and not everybody is Springfielditis. Here's a perfect example of a public servant working damn hard. Arnie, the way you're going, service for 8. I think you've got 4 of those. We'll keep that. And a 1-year membership in the City Club. One round of applause. Oh, yeah. Meeting adjourned.